Hey.
Hi, Riley.
Hi.
How are you doing today?
Good. Just got out of a club meeting.
Is it for the club that you're in, the pre-health one?
Yeah.
Exciting. How you feeling about the midterm coming up?
I think it'll be pretty good. I just wanted to review like some of the stuff that we've done. Just I don't know. I was asking Professor Rose if like basically the questions she sent out, and that I don't know if you get the emails that she sends out, but she's sending out like a midterm review thing, and
Mm-hmm.
I was basically just the one asking you those questions. I think that's why she sent out that email.
Oh, I haven't seen that specific one. I'll take a look at it real quick. I did see your email to me, and I just had
Okay.
time to answer it right before this meeting.
Yeah, no
And
worries.
I usually have a few review questions I go through, but if anyone has questions of their own, I'm so open to going over those too.
Okay, sweet.
Did you look at the midterm review she sent out? Did she send one out already?
No, she didn't send out like a specific like study guide or like study terms and concepts or something. But she basically just said to like review the past lecture videos and like reread your notes, reread the book, like the textbook pages she had assigned. But she didn't really assign like a specific like study guide or study questions. And I feel like that's kind of how I study best, or like kind of in a review like quiz way. So I thought that would be a little bit more helpful to go to tutoring than just kind of like looking at my notes.
Yeah, I'm um cutting out all the answers right now and then I'll share my screen because
Yeah, no
this is the
worries. Take your time.
same format I use for every single review session.
Okay, awesome.
Okay, I'm almost done.
No worries.
Okay, now I'm ready. Thank you for waiting.
Of course.
Okay, can you see my screen?
It's like a white line on the screen.
Okay, how about now?
Okay, wait, yeah, I can see it now.
Okay, so I have chapter 5 and chapter 4 review on this Google Docs.
Okay.
And do you have any questions specifically about lipids?
Not like off the top of my head. Maybe like once we start going through stuff, I might have more questions.
Okay. So there's four different types of lipids. Do you remember? Oh, I have the answers up there. Do you remember what they are?
Like the phospholipids, the fatty acids, and a sterol. I don't really understand sterols very much. Um, but like I guess we can go over it.
And triglycerides is the fourth one. Yeah, let's go
Okay.
over steroids. They are multi-ring structures, and our body uses it usually for hormonal things such as testosterone and estrogen. And cholesterol is the one we'll focus mostly on in for the steroids in the nutrition class because it's something that our liver produces
Okay.
and it's something we also consume. And its primary function is in cell membrane, and it makes cell membranes it's not rigid. So it makes them very fluid and flexible and gives that like I think it's called the fluid mosaic structure where it has a lot of flexibility because without cholesterol in the cell membrane, it'll be really stiff and rigid. And we kind of don't want that for our cell membrane because it's to regulate
Oh,
things.
okay. Got it.
And phytosteroids are found in foods of plant origin, while cholesterol is found in foods of animal origin.
Okay.
And the other component of cell membrane is phospholipids. Do you remember anything about that? Can you tell me what you know about it?
I know that they make up like the phospholipid or the plasma membrane, and then like they have like the heads and the tails, and then the heads are hydrophilic, and then the tails are hydrophobic, and then like that's kind of what makes up the things that can get in and out of the cell.
Yes. It's really cool that because they are hydrophobic and hydrophilic, it creates they help regulate what's going in and out. And essential fatty acids is another type of lipid. Do you remember the two versions of it?
Um, I don't.
So there's essential, there is mono unsaturated fatty acids and poly unsaturated fatty acids. Here, let me unblock it. They're over here.
Okay.
And specifically, the essential fatty acids is omega-3 and omega-6, and that is basically the name of the carbon. Did you take any like chemistry before this class?
Yeah, I've taken Chem 155 and 156 and I'm in OChem right now.
Basically, the name of them is just which carbon the bond is at.
Yeah.
And these two fatty acids, we're going to go more into it later when we go into lipoprotein, are super important in our diet because we can't make, I mean, we use it, we consume it because it helps make other non-essential fatty acids.
Okay. And then when you're talking about like if there was like a question that was like what are the two essential fatty acids, that would be monosaturated and polyunsaturated, and it wouldn't just be saturated, unsaturated.
It would just be omega-3 fatty acids and omega-6 fatty acids, which is
Okay.
polyunsaturated fatty acids. Because monounsaturated fatty acids is a completely different kinds of bonds for fatty acids. They have double bonds,
Yeah.
one double bond. And then for the poly one, it's specifically the double bond is on the third carbon, and then the omega-6 is on the sixth carbon.
Okay.
And these are unsaturated fatty acids, while there's another kind called saturated fatty acids. And the two differences is just that one's solid, saturated is solid at room temp, while unsaturated is liquid, while one's animal based and then one's plant based. So they're only found in animal origins, and the other
Okay.
one's found in only plants. Can you give an example of each that you could consume?
Like saturated could be like butter, and then unsaturated could be like olive oil.
Yeah. And then this next concept is really fascinating. Cis and trans fatty acids, they are unnatural. Like you can't really find them in nature because like people in labs, they make an extra bond on plant, plant unsaturated acids and it makes it solid at room temp. And it creates more bonds, so it will become like more different, but it's not like completely a solid. Like if you go to a grocery store and you get like margarine or something like that, it
Yeah.
is that's what cis and trans fatty acids look like at the store. And most of the time, these are very like people don't want to consume it because their body can't really break it down. Like our body does
Okay.
not have the enzyme to do that, unfortunately. So it's not very like people want to eat it. Like it's not
Yeah.
marketed for that.
So
Okay.
cis and trans are like not, those are something you'd try to avoid.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because you can't really find them in nature and our body can't really break it down. And it's called cis and trans because the bond that they like zap, one is on the same side, and the other one's on the different side.
Yeah.
Okay, this section right here, I wrote it down because I thought it was very fun to discuss. Is that usually when you see like food groups and stuff like that, they have a section specifically for like fats, even though lipids and fatty acids and triglycerides are found in all sorts of food groups, not just its own food group. And there's like a bunch of examples here, you know, of
Yeah.
which ones have it, just a few of them. But like it's not like when you see it at like those marketing, right? When they say oh, protein is just meat and stuff like that, but it also has vitamins and minerals. It's just like all
Yeah.
encompassing, but it just mostly has protein. So that's the gist I wanted to point out with this.
Okay.
Do you have any questions about this?
Yeah, that makes pretty good sense.
Yeah. Okay. Lipid digestion. So I think in the Jeopardy I made last time, I went over how lipids travel from like your mouth all the way to digestion and then absorption. Do you want to like try to plot it out in your head and then we could go over it? Like tell me
Like
what you know.
the steps of digestion.
Mm-hmm. Like when you consume it, what happens all the way to when it gets absorbed.
Okay. So in your mouth, there's like the salivary lipase, and then that's kind of like that's like, is that mechanical digestion?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So then that goes down, and then it goes down to your stomach, and then like other acids start breaking down. And is that still mechanical in your stomach, or is there chemical at that point?
I think in our stomach, it's mostly mechanical. And then
Okay.
when you go into your small intestines, that's where most of the chemical starts
Okay,
happening.
that's what I was thinking because I was kind of confused in one of her lecture videos. She was saying like I guess like at the duodenum. Is that how you say that? Duodenum? Because
Duodenum.
my old anatomy teacher says duodenum, and now I'm just kind of confused.
I think it
So
depends on the person. I think
okay.
my registered dietitian professor, she says like it just basically what how you were taught is what how you pronounce it. So
Yeah.
both are correct. It's just like which audience are you talking it to?
Okay. Yeah. So but she was saying that at the duodenum that like then there's kind of a start of um the chemical digestion. It starts going down through there,
Mm-hmm.
and
Yeah.
then goes into the small intestine, and then continues to break down into chemical digestion, and then goes into the large intestine, and then
Yeah.
is excreted.
But for lipids specifically, it doesn't go through that pathway.
Oh, okay. Forgot we were talking about lipids.
Oh, but like everything else tends to go through that pathway. Our small intestine does all the absorption, while in large intestines it absorbs primarily water. You remember that?
Okay, yeah.
Okay. So in the small intestines, specifically, I think our liver emits bile. I don't remember which section it does, but bile emulsifies fat. And imagine like you have a salad dressing with like oil and like a liquid, you shake it and you let it settle down for a very long time. It basically makes the fat have a lot of surface area so that other things could come in and start breaking it down more easily.
Okay.
And lipids is one of the most cellular molecules because it's huge. Like there's short chain, medium chain, and like bigger than that. And basically, when it's just so huge and long, it can't really get absorbed the same way into the hepatic portal like proteins and carbs usually do. It actually just enters through lacteals into the lymph system and then gets deposited in our bloodstream that goes to the liver and then gets deposited in adipose tissue. Do
Okay.
you remember that?
Yeah. Briefly.
Okay, any questions about that?
No, not yet.
Okay. And that thing is really cool because adipose tissue, like cells, they could go hold up to 50 times their weight, which is really necessary like back then for survival because when you don't know when like a famine's gonna happen. So these cells were like very helpful back then to store things. So if there was a famine, you'll survive with all these fat.
Hmm.
Oh, do you remember how many calories per gram for lipids?
9.
Yeah, it's one of the most heavy, energy dense. Okay. And then what else? Oh, and then there's lipoproteins. Do you remember about lipoproteins?
I don't, not really.
Okay, there's four different kinds. Let me unblack them. The one that's very unique to the other three is the chylomicrons. Have you heard about that?
Yeah, I have some notes on it.
Okay, can you tell me about it?
If I looked at my notes.
Okay, the chylomicrons. Think of it as like a truck, okay? And this is the transport for dietary fat from the small intestine to cells. So remember how we talked about how like lipids are so big and like long. So when they like break down through bile and stuff like that, they reassemble after in these chylomicrons.
Okay.
So that's what this lipoprotein primarily is.
Okay, got
And
it.
And then the three other that you should know is the low density lipoprotein. I should have wrote it down. Okay, let me write it down real quick. Low density lipoprotein and the high density. Lipoprotein. Do you remember what VLDL stands for? I think it's low density, but I think the V might be very
I
low.
think it's very low.
Okay.
I
It
think
sounds
that's
kind of
like that sounds
ridiculous.
so like I don't know. Like I don't know why they that seems like
Okay.
really simple.
Yeah. So the low density lipoprotein is quote unquote the bad cholesterol, which is only called that because it could be harmful. And this is the whole thing that leads to cardiovascular disease. Do you remember about that? Can you tell me about it?
The like the LDL causing cardiovascular disease.
Yeah.
Yeah, so like the like fats in there, I guess, like go into your arteries and start causing plaque and then plaque buildup and then things can't get through there and then that's what causes like heart attacks or like heart diseases and like other problems. My dad had something like that.
You know why the low density lipoprotein gathers in specific parts of the bloodstream?
Um, no, but is it like I don't. I was just gonna guess.
Go ahead, go guess.
Um, I don't really know. I feel like they would just kind of like solidify in like one spot, kind of like if you had like hot oil that like you were cooking with and then it like came to room temp, but like you put it down your sink and then it started clogging your sink
Mm-hmm.
because it like came to like room temp.
Yeah.
That's the process in my brain.
So the thing is, there's going to be something that creates like an impact in your blood vessels for it to accumulate. And usually it's if you're a high high smoker, like you smoke a lot, and it
Mhm.
creates like think of like a dent or something, like an injury, an impact, something that will cause that. And then like the white blood cells will rush to it, the lipoprotein. I mean, the low density lipoprotein will rush to it, and because they accumulate, they turn to plaque, and then like a blood clot could happen. But
Okay.
it's like like not normal, normally healthy people who like could get it. Like it's not like you have to have an injury, from
Hmm.
smoking. Like it could be so random, which is so unfortunate. But you increase your chances if you smoke a lot. That's the primary
Yeah.
factor for it. So that's why it's called a harmful cholesterol. And then the high density lipoprotein is called the good cholesterol. You know why?
Um, it's better for you.
It collects all the other cholesterols in the cells and then bring it to the liver. Because, like I told you before, our liver makes cholesterol and we don't really need to consume it. So, if we're eating it in excess, the high density lipoprotein goes around the cells, collects the cholesterol that is oxidized or that's like, or the excess one, and bring it to the liver and tell it, you don't have to produce more. We have a bunch here. Use this instead.
Okay, got it.
And the higher your HDL count is, the higher the high density lipoprotein count is, it reduces risk of cardiovascular disease because it's collecting all the extra. So there's no buildup.
Got it. Oh, wait, that makes so much more sense. I was trying to just like compare the two from like the definition and it like wasn't really making a lot of sense, but that was really helpful.
You have any more questions about this section?
No, but well, I guess I do. But so if the liver is like working overtime, if it was like creating too much, or I guess not creating too much cholesterol, but like since the HDL is like you don't have to create as much, if the liver was like had to keep creating, is that when the LDL is kind of like in I can't even like put into words of what I'm trying to say. Like, does the LDL and like liver overdrive kind of like go hand in hand?
I think so. Like a lot of times people do consume a lot of cholesterol, and that's why it's like popular in marketing where it says, "Oh, this lowers cholesterol" and stuff like that. It does go hand in hand. The HDL tells it to like stop or like to calm down or slow it down. Well, the LDL is what is sent out, and they're taken up by the scavenger white blood cells.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay. moving on. Lipid use. We talked about how it's 9 kcals per gram. It adipose cells can increase 50 times in weight. Oh, our primary, like, why do we have fat? Like, why is that in our system? Um, Primary reason, you know?
I know that it like keeps like if we didn't have fat, we'd be like cold all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And like we are like our organs wouldn't work as well because they'd be like basically like freezing.
Yeah, it's for insulation. And I think we're going to talk about this later in this course, but there's something called like brown fat where people who tend to be in like colder waters and colder climates, their fat actually starts metabolizing and starts using energy, which is cool. And people with babies are born with it and then we lose it over time. But
Oh wow.
insulation is so cool in people with different climates, living in different climates. Fat is 60% of our brain and it's in myelin sheaths. Have you heard about myelin sheaths?
Yeah, the Professor Rose was like talking about it, but I guess like is it like thin like fat layers that surround like in your brain?
Yeah, no, in our nerves specifically, which are in our brain. And it's not all nerve cells that are surrounded by myelin sheath, but it is made out of lipid. And eating like B12 specifically helps maintain these myelin sheaths so our nerves could function without like slowing down or being injured. It's pretty interesting to learn about that lipids and B12 are the things that do that for our nerves.
Yeah.
Okay. Signs of essential fatty acid deficiency. Do you have any memories of that for
Are
college?
these the kinds of things that are like if your hair is thinning and like your
Mm,
skin's like starting to like be like what was it like dry or something or like your skin
mm-hmm.
started not being good and
Yeah.
does it affect your immune system at all?
Not having enough lipids. Yeah. Like a lot of times when you are nutrient deficient, sometimes the symptoms overlap with other deficiencies. Like like flaky skin and itchy and like wound healing is there's just like a lot of signs, but like finding
Yeah.
out which specific nutrient you're lacking might be kind of hard unless you do more research. So these are like specifically for essential fatty acids.
Okay, got it.
But it could like wound healing. You could also be like lacking in like folic acid and stuff like that because you can't have cells like reproduce as fast, you know?
Yeah.
So it's just like this is a symptom of this, but this is also a symptom of that. So it could get really confusing. But there's just like if you see like there's like a sign of any health problems, there's probably something that the nutrition could help with, you know?
Yeah.
Okay, and then we went over omega-3 and omega-6. So here's some things you could consume. Omega-3 promotes heart and brain health because it has a lot of HDLs, high density lipoproteins. I didn't write that down, but if you consume a lot of omega-3s, they have a lot of high density lipoproteins, and that's the thing that gets rid of the cholesterol and tell the liver to stop overproducing.
Okay, got it.
Yeah, and it's primarily in seafood. So a lot of times vegetarians or vegans would eat flax seeds, which is a really good source of omega-3. Okay. But like also like if you only consume omega-3 fatty acids, it could cause stroke and bleeding because it doesn't clot as well, you know?
Oh,
You're trying
okay.
to get rid of it.
Yeah.
Okay. And then the last thing in this chapter I want to review is coconut oil because it's just such a fascinating lipid. Do you know much about
I don't
anything
get
about it?
I don't understand how it's a plant like a plant based thing, but it's like not really that good for you and it's kind of like on the same scale as like animal based products.
So the reason for that is because that coconut oil is highly saturated, more than butter and beef, which is chemically, like think of like the molecular bonds. Like when we talk about all the different type of cis and trans fatty acids, the monounsaturated, saturated, unsaturated, like not all the bonds are single bonds. I mean, like, like there's a mixture of each. There's a percentage of that fat that's saturated and a percentage that's unsaturated, and whichever one is greater, that's how it looks like. So usually animal-based fats have more single bonds, so it's called saturated, but it has a bunch of like mono unsaturated fatty acids too, you know? So it's like a mixture of the ratio of the percentage. And so coconut oil, even though it is plant-based, it is an outlier because it has so much single bonds. And it's very, like, when you look in the pictures, like the
Mhm.
bonds for saturated is very kinky. So it could accumulate and increase your levels of low density lipoprotein cholesterol. However, this is really good for people like my dietitian professor. She said that people who are malnourished, like they're like need to gain weight fast because it's like a lot of health problems come from being malnourished. They just consume a lot of coconut oil and that helps them gain weight and, you know,
Yeah,
reduce a bunch of symptoms and signs.
that's so crazy.
Yeah. Um, so that's the fun fact about coconut oil. Even though it's super highly saturated, it is highly recommended
Yeah.
for people who are extremely malnourished
I
as
feel
a
like
treatment plan.
I feel like coconut oil, like in my brain, like it should be like more healthy than like olive oil. But I don't,
Hmm.
that's just like in my brain, I feel like a bunch of like almond moms would be like, you need to buy coconut oil. But
Yeah.
I
There's
don't
like
know.
a lot of social culture around coconut oil. Like people are like, oh, do like oil your teeth, like the oil
Oh
pulling thing.
yeah. I use it in my hair, but like that makes a lot of sense like for using it for like either your skin and like your hair because it's like a really thick oil. Whereas
Yeah.
like olive oil is more like a runny kind of like consistency, but like coconut oil is like I don't know, I feel like it's like a really like thick kind of substance.
Yeah, like if you look at coconut oil at room temperature, it's a solid, which is
Yeah, I have
fascinating.
like a huge tub of it and it's like I'll have it in my bathroom like how is this like a rock? Like how is this like butter?
Yeah. But because it could increase blood levels of low density lipoprotein cholesterol, it's not recommended to consume a lot. But they don't talk about that when people market coconut oil, you know?
Yeah, I feel like if you didn't know anything about nutrition, you'd see coconut oil and just think like it was pretty good for you. Like I don't
Yeah.
know.
And because like nutrition is so complicated, when you see like those charts that are comparing different types of oils, and not only are there
Yeah.
like a mixture of all sorts of fats, they also have a lot of different phytochemicals in them that are different from each other, and a bunch of minerals and new vitamins that are different from each other. So there's like a lot of things that go into every single specific food that you don't really think about because we categorize them in different ways in our heads and in like media.
Yeah. It's kind of insane.
Yeah. Okay, we have 10 minutes left. Do you want to ask any questions or do you want to just review chapter 4, which was last week's or 2 weeks ago?
I think I'd be good to do the review.
Okay, so what are the differences between glucose and glycogen?
Um, Glucose is like the main like energy source. Whereas like isn't glycogen then like broken down into
Mm-hmm.
glucose? So doesn't it just kind of all end up being glucose anyways?
Yeah. But for some reason, one is specifically like used to make energy, while the other one is just for storing in animals at least. Like plants don't store their glucose as glycogen. And this is the part that I thought like blew my mind. The reason why we don't store glucose as glucose in our body is because on a molecular level, glucose is bulky. Like it
Oh.
is so it won't fit in our cells very well. Like it's just huge and like glycogen folds down really well. And that's why when we store it, it has a lot of bonds, it has a lot of energy, and it's just better. Like if we only had glucose, we'll be very like different size.
Yeah.
So that's the primary difference of why we store glucose as glycogen. I mean glycogen, sorry, glycagon is um a hormone. Okay. Divine mono, di, and polysaccharides and list examples of each. Do you remember these?
Um, the mono would be like one sugar, di would be two, and then or like two like single sugars. Or wait, is it two? Wait, now I just confused myself.
Think
The
of the roots, mono, di, and poly, and that could help
Yeah,
you.
like mono would be one and two, di would be two, and then poly
Hmm.
would be like more than three. But mono would be like glucose, and then di would be like, was it sucrose? Is that
Hmm.
or glucose and lactose? And then polysaccharides, I don't have an example of polysaccharides like off the top of my head.
Actually, glycogen is a
Oh,
polysaccharide. If you did it,
okay.
because can you imagine? Because it's like different saccharides that are like super compact, but there's like many of them.
Okay, wait, yeah, that makes so much more sense.
And then the other one she talk about in class is starches and fibers. And starches is like amylose and amylopectin, while fiber is soluble and insoluble. Remember those?
Yes. How is like this is like a random question, I don't know if you know, but I don't understand how like the skin of an apple and then like the inside of an apple is like half of it's like soluble fiber and then some of it isn't. Like, I don't
Okay,
know.
I feel like the apple was a harder example to think about. I would think of like, let me think, like a watermelon or like
Okay.
kale because so insoluble fibers are something we can't digest because we don't have enough enzymes for it or we don't have the right enzymes to digest it.
Yeah.
Cellulose in my microbiome class, I learned that cellulose has a specific bond that we don't have the enzyme to specifically break. So that's why it just goes through our whole system. But that's actually good for us because we want them to make bulk for our poop so
Yeah.
we don't get constipated.
Yeah.
Um, but the inside of the apple or like the inside of the watermelon, it's like mostly water. It holds water very well. Our bodies actually prefer it, specifically in the large intestines, in the microbiota. It prefers all these soluble fibers because it creates bacteria diversity and that helps us digest things a lot better than if you just ate like one fruit your whole life, you know?
Yeah.
So the roughage is another word for insoluble fiber, non-fermentable. Roughage is like you can't eat the watermelon skin because not only is it like super hard, there's a lot of cellulose in it, as well as the kale, you know, like the kale stalk, the one where
Oh
people
yeah.
peel
Yeah.
off. Like eating is not fun. Like maybe it'll be fun for a cow or a horse, but like not
Yeah.
for humans. It's just so much
It's so
energy to do it.
hard. Like,
Yeah. And you don't get much from it because our bodies can't break it down. So even like biting
yeah.
it, our teeth are not made for it. So that's how I distinguish like soluble, insoluble. Insoluble, we
Okay.
can't consume it. Soluble, we can.
Yeah.
I mean, it feeds our microbiota. Okay, so those are the differences. Okay, dietary versus functional fibers. Another different way to categorize fiber.
Um, so like I don't know, I feel like the dietary well, now that is one. Wait, I don't know. I'm confused. I have like
Okay.
too many
This
things in my brain.
No worries. This one is more, I think it's more for like marketing. Functional fiber is what you get fiber and you put it in a product that never had fiber. And that's like in like a granola bar or something. You
Yeah.
literally extract fiber or like in supplements because some people have like constipation problems or something like that, or they just like have the runs. So consuming fiber supplements
Yeah.
help build bulk so you can poop and not, you know, be constipated.
Okay, that's what I was thinking, but I was kind of like confused if that was actually like sometimes when I'm like taking this class, I'm like, did I just like hear that on TikTok or is like that like actually real?
I think TikTok has a lot of useful information. Just make sure you're like
Uh,
fact checking
I only
sometimes.
follow like registered dietitians because everybody has their 2 cents and half the time it's like wrong. So
Yeah, my professor, my dietitian professor, she told me like the three things you have to look for when people are giving news is number one, it's a company paying them to say that. Because you could be a registered
yeah,
dietitian and someone could pay you to say something too, even if they have a credential.
yeah,
And so if you know that they're sponsored by like a functional fiber supplement company, then they're promoting it for that reason. And they're saying things probably because they're promoting it.
yeah.
And then she said other two things, but that was the one I remember the most. Okay. How many servings of whole grains are recommended in your diet every day?
So like 35% of, wait, I feel like that's wrong. Wait, how many servings of whole grains are recommended? Like 20 grams? I
It's
don't
actually
know.
2 to 4 servings. I think
Okay.
35% would make sense if you think of your whole day of eating, you know?
Yeah, I think she was giving us a percent when I was looking at it, but well, she gave us a lot of information, but I didn't write like all of it down.
Yeah. And do you remember why it's recommended to consume whole grain instead of like all-purpose flour or like not the whole grain? Like remember the three like stamps that you could see at like a box with grains, like a cereal box, and it says,
Yeah.
"Oh, made of part grain, made of all whole grain." You remember that?
Yeah, like can't you just get like more like vitamins and minerals from like the actual whole grain instead of
Mm-hmm.
like things that are like stripped from the actual food and then it can be like enriched or whatever and then
Mm-hmm.
like fortified, but the whole grain doesn't it just like comes with all the vitamins and minerals.
Yeah. In my senior thesis, I was like studying all-purpose flour, and it's all-purpose flour and like the grains when they take away the bran and the germ, it's more shelf stable, but it loses like all the healthy fats, all the vitamins and minerals.
Yeah.
And the bran, which is like the shell around the grain usually, it's roughage. It's hard to eat. It's like it creates texture in like bread and like flour,
Yeah.
and some people don't like that, even though it like helps you with your bowel movements. People don't want that because it doesn't taste as good, even though they don't know much about it, you know?
Yeah.
Oh, and then we only have 2 minutes left. If you want, I could
Okay.
also send you these questions. I could email them to you and you could go with it on your own.
Yeah.
Um, Next week, I'm just going to make more questions for the next, I think we're doing chapter 5, chapter 6 this week, right? Chapter 6 and 5.
Yes.
So I will have questions on those. And for my next 2 review sessions, I'll just be going over those two, unless you bring questions of your own.
Okay, yeah, that would be awesome.
Yeah. Do you have any questions right now before we
Um,
go?
I don't think I have questions for like this chapter, but in like the midterm review, would you possibly be able to go over like the hepatic and like lymphatic portals a little bit more in depth? Like I was trying to figure out like the whole process in my head, but I feel like I needed somebody else to like kind of explain it into like different terms.
Okay. I have another meeting I have to go to in our time. We only have 1 minute, and
Oh
I don't
yeah,
think we
you
can
don't have to do it now, but
encapsulate in
like
the whole minute. But I
for
could,
the
if you, yeah, if you come on the next review session, I will definitely have something prepared to go over with you, or I could send it to you
yeah.
if you can't make it next week. Just
Yeah,
email me.
either one. And if it's like for the big like um review that we like have to attend, it could be in that or like even in an email,
Okay.
whatever.
Okay. I will email you by the end of today. Okay.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so
Nice to
much.
see you. Thanks for coming.
Yeah, of course. I'll see you next time.
Goodbye.
Bye.